What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the Ice Earn podcast. My name is Heidi. I'm a huge hockey fan. Full disclosure, I do support Boston, but I'm a big advocate for women's sports overall. What a week it's been. Week 4 of the PWHL, and we had quite a few games played this week. We had quite a few more firsts this week, so let's just dive right into it. First game we had this week was Toronto versus Ottawa. Toronto won, Ottawa 3. It was a game of purely lucky bounces. Not purely, but a lot of lucky bounces. Really starting with Emily Clark's goal. She really wasn't trying to score. It looked to me like she was just trying to pass through the crease, and it just worked out that it bounced off the pad of Howe. It was the first of several lucky bounces for them. That being said, Toronto's defense core was playing pretty well. They were just very unlucky. There weren't bounces going their way. There's not a lot you can do when, a puck bounces straight over your stick or straight over a goalie pad or straight off a goalie pad. There's really not much you can do, but I do have to give Toronto props because they have a system, it seems, that's working for them on the back end. Everyone seems to know what their role is, where they're supposed to be. I think that they have a solid foundation, and I hope to see it start to work out for them eventually. Another note on Toronto, Captain Blair Turnbull got her first PWHL point, and I had to really ask myself what took so long. So I did look into her background because I'm not Canadian and I'm not super familiar with her play style. But, what her stats from previous seasons and previous leagues tell me is that she's not really a run and gun type of player unless she's in a class all her own. Like in the CWHL, she's kind of a third or fourth line kind of type player in that she's, again, not necessarily shooting at every single opportunity. She's more of a steady presence, a gritty player that kind of gets in the corners and goes after pucks, and she's a thinker. From what I've been observing in the games, she's more of a playmaker, more of a thinking type player in that regard when it comes to point production. So what took so long is that every other team seems to be the run and gun type, more or less. That's not her style. So I think we're going to see more players like her come out of the woodwork eventually. She's just one of the more notable players that has not scored a point, especially considering she is captain. So back to the goalie discussion. Emmerance Mashmeyer did play a fantastic game. She had 31 shots on her, only let one goal in, so 30 out of 31 is a great statistic. But really, her defense has to help her out. Again, Toronto is a great team, despite where they stand right now. And they have players that can and will shoot from anywhere and everywhere. And Ottawa's defense really has to button it up. And I know I say this about every team because that's just kind of the nature of the players that are in the league right now. But the shots on goal right now were really uneven, especially in this game. So Mashmeyer faced 31 shots. Meanwhile, Howe only saw 19. And of course, the score speaks for itself. But 19 shots says to me that defense was doing their job and blocking shots and not letting it get to their last line of defense. So I think Ottawa can learn a lot from Toronto's defense in that respect. I think the craziest bounce and luckiest bounce that this league has seen thus far is in the last 2 minutes, Toronto had a 6-on-4 power play with Howe pulled, and it was in Ottawa zone, and Lexi Agia just tried to clear it. Honestly, not looking for anything special, just shooting it off the boards and out, and the puck took the craziest bounce I've ever seen and just went straight into the empty net from basically almost full ice. It bounced off at about the red line, I want to say, and then just straight into the empty net from there. And, nobody saw that coming. Nobody really was chasing it down that fast. So, congrats to her for that goal. I think she was just as surprised as the rest of us, which just makes it so much funnier. The last thing I want to say about this game is that Ottawa has a, group celebration that they are including the crowd in, and it reminds me a lot of Carolina's storm surge from a couple years ago. I think they said they got it from the Czech national team, actually, but I like that they're including their fans in it rather than just like the casual salute, which is fine, but this one is more interactive and like gives the crowd more direction, and it's just fun. It seems like everybody had a great time. Obviously, the home crowd's gonna love a win, but the group celebration, I think, just added an extra element, which was fun to see, even though I'm not an Ottawa fan. The next game this week was the very next night, and it was the first of what I believe is only 2 back-to-backs in the league this season. Ottawa played Boston 3, Ottawa 2. And I mean, for a back-to-back, they really didn't play all that terribly. Like, I don't think it was their best game necessarily, but it was hard to tell that it was a back-to-back. I think it would have just looked like an off night, I think, for anybody just casually tuning in. So a couple of takeaways from this game. Justin Trudeau was in the building and gave a pregame speech, which was, fine. Love him or hate him. It's nice to see, like, literally the highest level of politician in Canada supporting the league, supporting the team, and getting his family involved. He had his 2 kids. I don't know if he has more. I know nothing about Justin Trudeau, if I'm being honest, but it was nice to see a political figure really embrace the league and embrace women's sports. There's a clip of him clapping, like, really, really hard, and I don't know if he was trying to embarrass his kids or if he's just that enthusiastic, but it's worth a laugh. Again, love him or hate him, it's a good laugh. My biggest takeaway from this game is Alina Mueller finally gets her first goal of the season. She's been averaging about 3 shots a game. I'm pretty sure she had like 4 or 5 assists going into this game, but she finally gets one, and it's really good to see. I think it was not a monkey on the back necessarily, because we're not that far into the season, but it was probably something that was bothering her, considering she came from such a spectacular college career. And obviously it is a step up in terms of like level of play. But I think for somebody like her who's played Olympics, who's played World Championships, it was probably eating at her. So I'm really glad that she got one here. It's worth noting that once again, the refs did leave a lot uncalled. There were only 4 penalties called in the entire game, 2 for each team. And I wasn't at the game, obviously, but there was quite a few moments where the crowd wanted a penalty or Boston fans watching wanted a penalty and they just weren't called. So I don't know if they're just letting a lot go or if it's the refs are just not seeing it. Because it's not like it's all just roughing or boarding or anything like that. It was a lot of trips and hooks that were just not called. It's kind of a preference thing, I guess, when it comes to refs. So it's hard to tell why. In the first period, on that first goal, Ottawa goalie Sandra Abstrider looked like she might have pulled something. Maybe like a groin or a hip flexor. I don't know. I haven't seen anything come out about exactly what it was, but I feel bad for her. Hope she's on the road to recovery, whatever it is. Hopefully it was just something minor. She's taken a little bit of a break, but yeah, haven't seen her since, and just hoping she's doing well. The defense on both teams, I think, needs more structure. Boston had 31 shots on goal. Ottawa had 39 shots on goal. And kind of what I said in the last game, the Toronto-Ottawa game, is that the lower the shots on goal, the better the defense has been. It reduces it a little bit too much, but when you see this many shots, it's a testament to the shooters, sure, but it's also a testament to what the defense looks like. I think I've harped on Boston enough for this, but there's not really a lot of structure. Everybody's just kind of doing what they think they need to do, which isn't necessarily where they need to be or what they need to do. And a lot of it has been already covered by another player, so it's just players converging on one side of the ice when they don't need to be there. They can be in other places covering other players. But that said, Boston goalie Erin Frankel absolutely played out of her mind. She was the reason that Boston was in this game as much as they were. She was stopping things that she probably had no business stopping. It was a great game to watch her in, because there have been a couple where she's had some flashes of brilliance, but other than that, she's kind of been So I'm glad to see that this is the Frankel that everybody talks about. On the downside of this game, as a Boston fan, we no longer have a perfect penalty kill, which is kind of a bummer. But I mean, we're still best in the league for penalty kills, which is so funny when overall I think our defense is probably the worst in the league. So this penalty kill thing really makes me laugh. That's kind of a bummer, but still doing really well. And I can't talk about this game without talking about Teresa Schaffsel. 52 seconds left. She was in the right place at the right time, doing exactly what I've been saying that Boston needs to do, and collecting rebounds. Mueller passed to Marvin, who had a great shot, bounced off either the pad or the wall, and Schaffsel was there to just collect the rebound and bury it. So that was a really exciting last minute of the game, really. The last couple minutes were exciting. I mean, a 2-2 game with 2 minutes to go. Nobody's pulling their goalies. It's just all-out hockey. So that was super exciting to see. And I'm, as a fan, really glad that Boston pulled out the win. We needed that one. I'm going to take a break from game reviews and tell you about the Battle on Bay Street, which is very, very exciting as a PWHL fan. It is Toronto versus Montreal on Friday, February 16th at 7 p.m. These two teams will be facing off at the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Canada. For those of you who are not hockey fans or just new to the sport, don't watch the NHL, Scotiabank Arena is the home of the Toronto Maple Leafs and has a capacity of 19,000. So what this means is that there is a very good chance that the previous world record set for women's hockey attendance, set in Minnesota a couple weeks ago, will be broken. I mean, if there's any city in the world that could break that record, it's Toronto, so I believe in you guys. Tickets go on sale on February 1st. If you hold season tickets to PWHL Toronto, check your email. They should have sent you a link for seat selection for you guys. Check that out. It is before tickets go on sale. Make sure that you buy these tickets, guys. If I lived anywhere close to Toronto, I would absolutely want to see this. Absolutely want to see such a great rivalry game at such a big venue. I think a lot of Montreal fans are going to make the drive out to Toronto, so it's going to be, I think, a heated fan section. And yeah, I'm just really excited for the sport to see this happen. I'm really confident that Toronto can beat 13,316 fans, so make it happen, y'all. On to the next games of the week. Montreal 2, Minnesota 1. Honestly, the score doesn't fully reflect the play for this game. Montreal only had 26 shots on goal. Minnesota had 46, which is ridiculous. It's just absurd. So you already know what I'm going to say. Defense really needs to step it up here. 46, again, is ridiculous. Where is the Montreal defense? Does it exist? I'm not sure. It looks to me like they're just relying on goaltending alone. And, I mean, on that note, it wasn't even Desbiens that was playing. It was their backup, Elaine Chuli. She put the team in her backpack and carried them up a mountain. It wasn't even a small mountain. This was like climbing freaking Everest. 45 of 46 saves. That's unreal. I've never heard of this woman in my life. No knock against her at all. I'm not necessarily up on my international female hockey players. But God, where has she been hiding? Montreal might have the best goalie tandem in the league if Chuli can repeat this performance. And kind of going back to all of these shots, like, there were multiple players with more than 5 shots in this game. We got Zumwinkle, we got Shepherds, Boreen, Heidi, and Krishova. And if you're not sure what all of those players have in common, let me tell you, they're all on Minnesota. All of them. Not a single player on Montreal had more than like 4. Honestly, I think it was 3. I don't even know what to say. Like, Minnesota is a run and gun team. So to let the team take that many shots, you can't do that. Like, that's Montreal. I don't want to say it was fully lucky, but they're honestly lucky that they won that game. I think one of my biggest takeaways from this game is Vanishova. She's a player to watch. I believe she's Czech. So again, I'm not fully up on my international female hockey players, but she's a game breaker. Honestly, she plays really smart. Obviously, she could be a little bit better at defense, as everyone else could. But she could have and probably should have had more goals. That's a player to watch, and I'm going to keep my eyes on her for the rest of the season. On the 26th, we had New York and Toronto face off in Toronto. New York 0, Toronto 2. I think the only way to start this off is by saying, damn, Toronto finally had things go their way. Kristen Campbell had her first shutout, 19 of 19 stops. Schroeder also played a pretty good game, actually very good game. She had 28 of 30 shots saved. She played very well. The loss, I don't think, can be credited to her, at least not entirely. Could she have made those saves? Maybe. But at the end of the day, I don't think that she should have had to. Shockingly, I think New York needs to step up their defense. Obviously, the player of the game here, despite Kristen Campbell having a great game herself, was Natalie Spooner. She had both goals for Toronto, and the first one was a beauty. She didn't even have a breakaway. She got a cross-ice pass with two defenders on her. She created her own space, split the D, went forehand, backhand, took the shot across the crease. She just sailed it. It was poetry, to be honest with you. One of the prettiest goals I think we've seen this season. Again, I'm not even a Toronto fan. This was just, as a hockey fan, this was probably one of the prettiest goals I've seen in this league so far. Her second goal was not as pretty, but it does go to show that I'm not talking out of my butt when I say every team needs to work on their rebound control. She had a masterclass in why being near the crease and ready for the rebound is important, even if you're not the one taking the shot. It was off the boards, and then she put it right into an open net when Campbell thought it was coming from the other side. Kids out there, if you're listening, make sure that you practice rebounds. Fight for that puck until a whistle's blown. For New York, I can't forget them completely, despite the scoreboard. I think Jessie Eldridge had a standout performance for the game. Despite, again, the score. She had 5 shots on goal, and she looked to me, in my humble opinion, to be putting in the most effort. Not that New York was, trying to phone it in by any means, but I think that she just looked to me like she was on it and really battling and taking every opportunity that she got when the rest of the team maybe was not doing as much. And I think the downside for this game was, and I mean this nicely, Toronto, a little boring. Not completely, of course, but it was less physical, a little bit less excitement. Didn't seem to be high stakes really, and the crowd was super quiet. Maybe that was just the broadcast wasn't picking up things. Somebody who went to the game let me know. But without the crowd involved, it did seem kind of low energy, to be honest. Taking a break from PWHL hockey for a minute, I want to talk to you about the 2024 Women's Beanpot. So for those of you who don't know, the Beanpot is a hockey tournament in Boston between 4 Boston schools: Boston University, Boston College, Northeastern University, and Harvard University. The women's tournament has been going on for 45 years, but this year was the first time that it was hosted at the TD Garden. Meanwhile, the men's tournament has been hosted at the Garden, whether that was TD or Boston Garden back in the day, for a lot longer, decades. It was a complete coincidence that the PWHL started the same year. The semifinals took place on the 16th. Boston University beat Boston College 4-3 in a shootout, and then Northeastern beat Harvard 1-0. On the 23rd was the final and consolation game day at the Garden. For the consolation game, Harvard beat Boston College 3-2 in a shootout, which is kind of a bummer because I think BC seems to play a decent game, but just can't get it done in the shootout. And for the final, Northeastern beat Boston University 2-1 in overtime. I didn't watch the game. I didn't go to the game. I wish I did, because it was a record-breaking crowd for Boston. It was 10,633 people in the crowd, which is the largest in Boston history and the second most in the U.S. after PWHL Minnesota. Even though I didn't go, I can tell you right now that the MVP for the tournament was Skylar Irving from Northeastern University and originally from Kingston, Massachusetts. She had both goals in the final game, one being the overtime game winner. And some standouts to my eye were Grace Campbell from Boston College, goalie. She had 47 saves in the consolation match. Like I said, Boston College seems to play a great game, but just can't get it done in the shootout. And then also in the consolation game was Emily Davidson of Harvard, who was the other goaltender. She had 39 saves. Some standout attendees were Governor Maura Healey and Mayor Michelle Wu, who dropped the puck, and the pep bands. A little fun fact about me is that I was a music minor in college, and I was devastated that my school didn't have sports or a pep band. Well, we had sports, but not big sports, so we didn't have a pep band, and that was a bummer for me, because I love pep bands. A little bit of background about the Beanpot. With this win, Northeastern now has 19 Beanpots, the latest of which being, of course, this year, but also last year, so they are back-to-back Beanpot champions. Harvard has the next most with 15, last winning in 2021. BC has 8, last in 2019, and BU has 2, last in 2018. And I do have to give a shout out to the Boston Globe. They had a great article about the Beanpot and kind of the background of it and all of that, so I will link that in the description. And while we're on a break, I want to tell you about this week's Player Spotlight. Alina Mueller. Alina Mueller was born on March 12th, 1998. I apologize in advance to any German speakers, but her hometown is Winterthur, Switzerland, which is near Zurich. In her youth and junior hockey career, she played for Winterthur U15 to U18 from 2010 to 2015. I guess they have different divisions, so she went from the top division to the elite division in 2013-2014. Kind of goes to show that she was good from a very young age. She played U17 for Cloton in the elite novice division, and then at 14 years old, she debuted for the ZSC Lions, which is in the Women's Swiss League. At 14 years old, she played 2 games with the Lions, and then at 15, she played 3 games with the Lions. In 2017-2018, she played 17 games with them. She had 33 goals, 24 assists, and 57 points. Her total for her career with the Lions was 28 games played, 52 goals, 38 assists, 90 points. So it goes without saying, she was above the Swiss League at a very young age. Mueller went to college at Northeastern University in Boston from 2018 to 2023. She is a 5-time Hockey East champion. In her career, she played 159 games with the Northeastern Huskies. She has 98 goals, 156 assists, and 254 points. So once again, just making an absolute mockery of this league. Of course, she has to have an international career with all those stats and being from a smaller country. She played U18 for Switzerland from 2012-2013 to 2015-2016. She had 20 games played, 24 goals, 9 assists for 33 points in U18. She's played World Championships 7 times for Team Switzerland. In 30 games played, she has 13 goals, 13 assists for 26 points. And I think the Olympics are really where she shines. She made her Olympic debut at the 2014 Olympic Games in Sochi at the age of 15. In 6 games played, she had 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points, and she won a bronze medal over Sweden that year. And she was also the youngest ice hockey player to win an Olympic medal, and that is men or women. She came back for the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. She tied the Olympic record for most goals by a woman when she played versus United Korea. She had 3 goals in the first period and 1 goal in the second period, so 4 goals in 1 game. And then she came back for Beijing in 2022 with the A on her chest for alternate captain. In 7 games played, she had 4 goals, 6 assists for 10 points. Some fun facts about Alina. Her older brother, Mirko, was drafted 18th overall in 2013 by the San Jose Sharks. He played for both the Sharks and the Devils from 2014 to 2020 when he moved back over to Europe. Alina studied behavioral neuroscience and exercise science while at Northeastern University. She wakeboards for fun, and there is a picture of her with Crosby, Jamie Benn, Weber, Tavares, and Subban at the Sochi Olympic Games on her Instagram if you scroll back far enough like I did, because I'm a creep. Alright, and rounding up the last games of this week, Ottawa versus Montreal. Ottawa won, Montreal 2 in overtime on the 27th. Montreal set a Canadian attendance record with 8,646 people in attendance for this game. Montreal really gave him a show. Laura Stacey had a really slick wraparound goal in the first period. I do have to ask the question of what the hell was Mashmeyer doing? She looked like she had no idea that was coming when a wraparound is a pretty standard save to make. So kind of wondered what was going on there. Once again, Montreal really has to chill with all these penalties. They came into the game with the most penalty minutes against them, and they left the game with even more penalty minutes against them. As it stands, as I'm sitting here, they have 64 penalty minutes when the next closest are Toronto and New York with 50. So that's, a solid 7 penalties more. I believe they had 5 in this game. A big factor for those penalties, especially in this game, was Dubois, who signed another 10-day contract with Montreal, because she's sandpaper. She is a gritty player. She is a tough player. Not really one that you necessarily want to play against, but is kind of a liability when it comes to penalties. She took 2 this game, and one of them was a boarding minor, which says to me that you kind of got to rein her in as a coach. I mean, I know you want to have grit on your team for sure, but taking a boarding penalty, it's not worth it. It's not worth taking a penalty for that. Another interesting fact that came out of this game is that Ottawa is currently the team with the fewest goals against. And honestly, they probably should have only had 1 from this game. As it stands, the shots on goal were Ottawa with 44, Montreal with 24. 44 isn't the most, but it's pretty close to having the most shots on goal in a single game. Montreal really needs to rein in their defense, but Ottawa's probably should have had more if it weren't for Anne-Renee Desbiens standing on her head with a ridiculous game. There was a scrum in overtime where she could have gotten scored on like several times, but she tracked the puck and she hung on until the whistle blew. Good for her for that. That was a great play to watch. One great thing that Ottawa did this game was keep Marie-Philippe Poulin under wraps and kept her quiet. Not that she was invisible, of course, but she was kept off the score sheet, and with a dangerous player like her, that's really what you want. And that being said, Maureen Murphy stole the game in overtime, despite Ottawa's best attempts, really. Montreal was outplayed, in my opinion. I think Ottawa really should have won, but the score is the score, and again, Maureen Murphy just stole it straight out of their hands. And the last game of this week was Minnesota at Boston, and I was at this game, so I got to watch Minnesota score 3, while Boston scored 4, and win in overtime yesterday. Boston had a really hot start. They came out all cylinders firing. Every single line was just clicking and gelling, and it's exactly what I've wanted to see every single game this season. I think I've said it every single podcast. They're not clicking. Well, it finally happened. They were absolutely on fire for the first 15 minutes of this game. Fratkin scored her first goal despite the announcer in the stadium saying Franklin. That's something to work on. Mueller once again showing how elite she is, scoring a goal in the first period and then having an assist on the game winner. It's a privilege to watch her play. It's not just her dishing the puck, not just her shooting the puck, but she was gritty in the corners. She got a face wash from somebody on Minnesota. I don't remember who it was, but she's out there and she's not afraid to get gritty. I do have to give props to Zumwinkle on a huge rebound. Once again, taking what I say every single week, saying, you got to control the rebound, and she did that, she collected it, and she scored off of it, so I can't fault her for that, despite me cheering for Boston. Same as I can't fault Kendall Coyne for scoring the game-tying goal in the last, minute of the game. Took the wind out of my sails for a little bit there, as historically Boston has not done great in overtime. Another standout for this game was Megan Keller. She was playing physical with or without a stick. There was a moment where she didn't have her stick down in one of the corners and was just pushing and shoving with her bare hands, just getting in the way, I don't know, just throwing her weight around. And it's worth noting, I was 2 rows off the glass again, and she's a tall lady. She and Hillary Knight are tall ladies in comparison to the rest of the league. Megan Keller, at the very least, is 5'11", and for perspective, Kendall Coyne is 5'2". So when you put them next to each other and have them play in the same league, it's just crazy to watch, but I love watching it because Megan Keller's not afraid of that difference, and she does throw it around without being reckless. So she knows how to play well, how to play correctly, and how to get the most out of her skill set and her physicality. Really got to take my hat off for Emma Soderberg in goal. She got pulled in the last home game, which I think was kind of a downer for her, and I really wonder if this game wasn't Courtney Kessel giving her a second try at a home game, because I felt really bad the last game. It wasn't necessarily all her fault, but she didn't have a great game. But yesterday she stepped up, she was on fire, she was locked in. The goals against her weren't the easiest saves to make, so I'm not really faulting her entirely for those. The last one was just gritty, was a 6-on-5, so she played really, really well. She had some stops that she probably shouldn't have had. The save of the game from yesterday on Boston's Instagram will show you that. The last player I'm going to highlight here is Hillary Knight, who had her first assist early in the game and then had her first goal as the game winner in overtime. Again, it was kind of a scrum, kind of crazy in front of the net, and she got it done. So we've been waiting for that one, and the crowd really loved it. A couple of critiques that I have, as I always do. Once again, Minnesota's defense was not great. They were a little bit all over the place, which is out of character for them because I think Minnesota has one of the better defense structures in the league, but yesterday they seemed a little bit out of sorts. Not like catastrophically, but there were a couple moments where you were like, do they notice that? Do they see that? Or just kind of wondering what's going on there. A critique for Boston that I have is that, I said it in a group chat, but Boston seems to be allergic to the blue paint. And what I mean by that is they don't love to get in and around the crease when they're in the offensive zone. I've heard it called the mixer before, and I really like that, but they don't like to get in the mixer and get in there and get gritty goals. So I think that if they have a player who is designated as the mixer person, then I think we'll see a lot more success with that. I don't know exactly who it's going to be because, again, we haven't really seen too many try it, but they got to get in that mixer. They got to get in and collect those rebounds up close. It should be noted that this was Boston's first home win, which was great to see. I've paid for 4 games, been to 3 because of the one that was postponed, and this was the first that I've paid for and seen a win. So that's great, and it's nice for my wallet to really feel like it's extra worth it, because it's always worth it to see them play, but extra worth it to get a little bit of free hockey and get the win. There's also a fantastic sign that they highlighted on the Jumbotron. I can only assume it was one of her friends from high school, but it said, "I scored on Frankel in high school. I gotta love friend chirps." This game was the first of a back-to-back for Minnesota. It's the second in the league, and I believe the last. I'd have to double-check the schedule for that, but I believe it's the last back-to-back that we're going to see this season. So another first for this week was not a first that we really wanted to see, especially as a Boston fan, was the first suspension of a PWHL player, Taylor Wenzikowski, on Boston. She had a really, really ugly hit on Ottawa's Amanda Boulier. It was just unnecessary. She was flying in, dropped the shoulder, and caught Bollier's head. While I don't think she intended to hit the head, really, why are you dropping the shoulder when you're coming in that fast? The height difference was enough where, really, I don't know what else you would be dropping the shoulder for. I mean, if she didn't drop the shoulder, it would have been like a chest contact, meaning Bollier's would have hit her chest, which is still not a great hit, and I think would have still been a penalty, but it's not going to be as sharp of an impact on the head as a shoulder is. I know shoulder on shoulder is considered like a clean hit, but dropping the shoulder seemed like a very dangerous thing to do in that situation, so I really questioned it in the moment. It was in the third period at 2:28, and there's clips online for those of you who are curious. In the game, it was only a 2-minute minor. Honestly, it probably should have been a 5-minute major at the very least, but she ended up getting a 1-game suspension, so she sat out yesterday's game versus Minnesota. And I really have to wonder why it was only 1 game. again, I'm a Boston fan, but like I didn't like this hit. Are they modeling it after the NHL's really arbitrary Department of Player Safety rulings? Or I would love to see the reasoning behind it, because again, while I don't think it's intentional, this is exactly the kind of stuff that they don't want in the league. So I would have thought that they would have set precedent, a better precedent, a harsher precedent of something like 3 to 5 games for that. The quote that I have here is, "Player safety is a top priority," by Jana Heffert, who is the Senior Vice President of Hockey Operations for the PWHL. And I kind of question that, because while thankfully Amanda Beaulier is seemingly okay and was playing later in the week, I don't think that this sets a great precedent for player safety. Again, I think it was worth more like 3 to 5 games. But let me know what you think. Hit me up on any of the socials. Player standouts for this week, we have Alina Mueller of Boston, Lexi Agia of Ottawa, Elaine Chuli of Montreal, and Debian of Montreal. That's all I have for you guys this week. Make sure that you follow the pod on all of the socials. It's at IceEarnPod on Instagram, same username on Reddit, and you can find on Facebook, Ice Earn Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this on your podcast app, and leave a review. Have a great week, everybody.